All right.
She should be talking.
There we go.
It's recording.
Come on.
Okay.
Okay. I never heard that. I'm Jeff. This is Angela over here. I'm not used to giving presentations. This is the first time I've given in a long time, so bear with me here. Okay. So we are the county co-coordinators for Chester County for the Pennsylvania Bird Atlas #3. I know there's been a lot of questions on this. It's not necessarily intuitive how this all works, so let's all run through this. So this is the presentation developed by Amber Weevil, who is the coordinator for the state. That is, she's out of, she lives in Boalsburg. She's working out of Hawk Mountain. This is her presentation she gave to everyone a couple months ago. So I'm going to run through that. The plan tonight is to run through this quick. Then I'm going to run through the handbook, which if anybody in the room doesn't have one, we printed some out and brought them. Does anybody not get one? We have a couple up here. And then we'll run through that, and then we'll run through everybody's questions. And then we will all know how to Atlas 100% and don't need to ask any more questions at all, and we're good to go. Okay? So, also I just wanted to say, when Angela and I first started birding pretty heavily in Chester County, the first person we ran into was Barry, and he could not have been nicer with giving us spots, telling us where to go, what to do. And I always associate Barry with Westchester Bird Club, so as soon as I saw Westchester Bird Club wanted me to come talk, I was like, I'll help Barry. Let's go. Did you have a question? We're going to run through that. But you can, this is publicly available. This is available on the website. There will be a link for it. Nope. My employer was very happy that I printed that out today. And I do have extras. I can leave them with you guys too if you want. We printed out a lot. So let's try to count all the birds in Pennsylvania. So this is Bird Atlas 3. Here's our logo with the titmouse on it, which is why it was a little painful that we heard about a sharpshin sniping a titmouse. This is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Game Commission and Hawk Mountain in partnership. What is a bird atlas? So basically we're trying to get a handle on all of the birds in Pennsylvania with an emphasis on the breeding birds. There will be a winter bird atlas coming starting in the winters, but we don't have a lot of information on that yet, so we're just going to run through the bird atlas. This will be the third one. The second atlas was, I think the book was around 2005. I actually have the second atlas over there on the table if anybody wants to take a look through that. I can not go home with anybody. That is mine, and it costs a few bucks. There's all sorts of information in there, and it is very cool. And it's pretty cool that we're going to have a third one that we're all going to participate in. That will be out at some point in the future. So this is going to, data collection for this is going to run for the next 5 years. This is very important because a lot of conservation decisions, conservation money, habitat protection, and whatnot will be based on the data we all collect. Why an atlas? Because we're all biased. Right here at the bottom is pulled from eBird. I'm not sure what the time period is, but the darker a county is, the more eBird checklists it has. We all see Chester down there. We're all diligent eBirders, but if you take a look around the state, most of the state does not look like that. And if you know your geography, a lot of those dark colors correspond to where people live. So they're in the center, you have Center County, obviously because of Penn State. On the left there, you got Pittsburgh. Down in southeastern Pennsylvania, where most people live. I think it said that Greene County has about a third amount of checklists. There's Chester County. Greene's there on the bottom left. It's surrounded by West Virginia. So it's a conscious effort to get people out to places they would normally bird to collect data. Here's the history of the previous atlases. Bird Atlas 1, did anybody here in the room work on that? Barry raised his hand as I expected. Bird Atlas 2, did anybody here work on that? We got a couple, John and Barry. Bird Atlas 3, who's going to work on that? Hopefully everybody just raised their hand. The Bird Atlas, the breeding Bird Atlas started January 1st because there are birds that are breeding in January. And the winter Atlas efforts will start in December. And this is intended to run through February of 2029. One of the things that will probably be even more extreme this time around, here's two species that when I started paying attention to birds in like the early 90s were considered more southeastern species, the Carolina wren and the red-bellied woodpecker. You can see the green on that map was for Atlas 1 and Atlas 2, and blue was only on Atlas 2. So it's clearly two species that expanded in that time period. I would imagine most of the state will have evidence of those two species nesting. The objectives for the atlas are to uniformly cover the state. So think about a lot of those white counties we saw on the last map. Document all the species that do breed in the state and how much they do, and also to educate and engage. How to atlas. Basically go birding and use eBird. I assume most people here have at least some idea of how to use eBird. All of the data will be collected through eBird. It's just a little different than we normally do it. But basically you're contributing by birding and putting the data in. The state is divided up into 4,900 blocks, and that is what is the base data collection point. So I forget the number for Chester County. I'm not going to make a number up. I forget how many Chester County is, but there are specific data targets for each block. And you see there are 4,900 blocks that will need data, and this is all being done by volunteers, except for some point counts. So a lot of volunteer efforts are needed. Yep, 3 by 3, and that should be 9 if I remember how to math. But yeah, some are obviously around the borders of the state. Some are going to be a little smaller, but it ignores county lines. The only lines that matter are the state lines and the block lines. Correct. So here is something we're going to get more into when we go through the handbook. This is probably what has generated the most confusion. This is the dates per species. So this is in your handbook towards the back. Every species that is expected to be observed is coded like this. So let's take a look at Canada goose there. N is non-breeding. So as you'd expect, January, February, non-breeding. February, March is into migration. As you get into March and April, you can be either. And the B is considered the safe dates. We'll get into more of that later. I'm just running through this quick. So as expected, the safe dates for something like the Canada goose would be throughout the summer. As you look down there too, definitely it's more extreme for our neotropical migrants there in that second half. June, July. June is when a lot of June is when a lot of the data collection will be the most important. We will go through this in more detail. I just wanted to run through this briefly on this one. There are 4 types of codes, which again, we'll get into more depth in there. There's a lovely red-headed woodpecker on the right there, which we all know and love. But the breeding codes are broken out into 4 categories: confirmed, probable, possible, and observed. Observed is kind of worthless. We're mainly worried about 1, 2, and 3. Observed, no code, you saw the bird. Also, flyover is considered an observed code. Flyover doesn't have a ton of meaning with honeybird either. These are your 2 possible codes. Appropriate habitat, singing bird. I'm just gonna go through these quick. Here's your probable codes. Singing bird present 7 days, multiple singing birds, suitable habitat. Territorial defense. I don't know if has anybody ever actually used the codes on eBird? Cool. Even before the atlas? Cool. I do too, but I don't know how many people actually do because they don't mean a ton unless they're actually doing atlas collection efforts, but I still use them. We will go through that in the atlas. The singing is a probable code. I'm sorry. Lois said she's used the singing bird code before. How are you supposed to know if it's actually the right time to use it? Was more or less your question. Are they in the right territory? So it doesn't get into it as in-depth on habitat. That the time of year is what matters more. Singing bird is a possible code. You only use the possible codes there when you have the Bs, which are considered the safe dates. We'll go through that. I'm just doing this quick because this is like 2 things we're going through. We'll go into that like in depth when we go to the handbook. And also I meant to say at the beginning, if anybody has any questions about what's on the screen, interrupt me, please. If you have any general questions, you can save them until later. But if there's a question about what we're looking at, please interrupt and yell at me. Here's some more. So possible would mean this bird's here, it's singing, there's a chance it could be breeding here. Probable means I've observed behavior that there's a pretty good chance that bird's nesting here, which are things like there's a lot of, like you go to Chesline in the middle of June, there's 300 red-winged blackbirds singing there. Pretty good chance they're nesting there. Visiting nest site, courtship displays, nest building. The confirmed codes are, I'm 100% sure this bird is nesting here. Things like it's building a nest. I see an occupied nest. I see babies. I see a killdeer walking away from me doing the broken wing display. I see babies. They're feeding young. These are obviously the best data points when you have confirmed data. Breeding codes, which we'll go through. We'll go through this in more depth. So block completion. So you saw there are 4,900 blocks. This is how a block would be considered complete. And we have 5 years to do this with each block. So obviously, some blocks are going to be more than 70 and some are going to be a lot less than 70. If you have a block that is only downtown Westchester, you're probably not going to have 70 breeding species in a block in downtown Westchester or Philadelphia or Reading or wherever you could think of. If you are in a much more varied block with varied habitat, say up, yeah, like Western Chester County where there's nice habitat, you might have more than 70. So it really varies by block. That's what the data crunchers who are working on this are, but it's about 20 plus hours during the prime breeding period, in April to August, visiting multiple habitats. And they also want to do nocturnal surveys in each block. Bird Atlas portal we'll go through, because that's how the data goes in. This was from January. There are species that are breeding in January. So as of January 9th, we had already confirmed red, this is for the state, not the county. Red crossbill, red-tailed hawk, bald eagle, Banner's barn owl, I believe. Great horned owl, rock pigeon were probable at that time. This, lots we'll go through. All right, let's jump over to the handbook, which is the quick presentation for background that Amber gave. Let's go through the, shoot, where it is. She's given that presentation a few times. It's on YouTube she's done that at least 3 or 4 times in different groups. It's on YouTube. I can definitely find that. Okay. Here is the, I still don't know how to use my computer. I forgot my mouse. That's the real problem here. All right, so here is the Atlas Handbook, which you all have in your hands. This is the more, how do I get this in presentation mode? I did this earlier. I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. I know there's a way to full screen this and I can't figure it out. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So here is the Atlas Handbook. This is what we're going to spend the most of our time going through. This is how to Atlas. So just a couple things I want to go through here at the beginning before we start to go through this. All of the data is being collected through eBird. It also has to be through the Pennsylvania Bird Atlas portal on eBird. Has anyone started using the portal yet? See a couple hands in the room? If it doesn't go in through the portal, the data doesn't go towards the Bird Atlas. The good news is you can change that. You can put the portal on your app and just leave it, and it's on the portal forever, and that's good if you want to do that way. If there's checklists you've put in that should have gone towards it, you can go in later and edit your checklist and actually put it back in through the portal, which is good. but everything has to go through the portal, and we will go through how to actually make sure you're submitting to the portal. So all data has to go through eBird, it has to go through the portal to count. Barry?
Just a comment. If you're burning outside of Pennsylvania, you don't want to use the portal.
So I did by accident and nothing happened. Like it was fine. It looks a little weird because like you can submit a checklist in New Jersey. Barry said if you're burning outside the state to try to remember to switch it. I do, but the one we were in Jersey and I forgot it and it looked weird, but everything was fine.
Yeah, everything will be fine. It's just that
It looks weird.
it's contaminating. The data.
Yeah, right.
So
Oh,
it's
right,
hard.
right, yeah.
And you can go in and change it from the reading portal to regular email.
Correct. Right, you can change it after the fact. I mean, I don't know why you would need to be burning outside of Pennsylvania, but theoretically, yes, Barry's correct. Another thing too that's going to be different here is we want to keep checklists short. So usually, I mean, we might go over to, let's just say Cheslin for 3 hours and walk a mile. And that'll just be all on one checklist. So the guidance has changed since this was made, but now they want to keep checklists to about an hour and a mile. So if you're out somewhere birding for, say you're out birding for 3 hours, you hit around the hour mark, you want to cut your checklist, start the next one. And they also want to keep it to the same habitat types. So if I'm just going to keep using Cheslin as an example, because I figure most people know that place. And also there's multiple habitat types. Say you were going, you go over to Cheslin and you hit the wetlands for an hour. That'll be your first checklist. And then say you do an hour on over working fields. That would be another checklist. And then maybe you do another hour walking through the woods. That would be another checklist. Even if you haven't hit the hour, you want to keep it to habitat types too. So if you spend 45 minutes at the wetlands, that's your first checklist. They want to try to keep habitat types together. So it makes sense on the checklists so that you don't have a nesting Virginia rail on the same checklist as like a nesting goshawk, because that would not make any sense. So you want to try to keep the habitat types together. So like the data is grouped on the checklist together. And you want to try to do complete checklists as much as you can. Breeding codes we will go through in detail because I know that's where a lot of the confusion is. Also, you want to atlas ethically. Yes, we want to get data about nesting species that might be tough, more tough document like owls, but you don't want to be out blasting owl tape every night for the next 5 years. So we all know how to atlas, we all know how to bird ethically. Same applies for atlasing, probably even more so since we will be interacting with nesting birds and that are more prone to disturbance. Even a robin is more prone to being disturbed on a nest than it is when it's in your yard eating worms. Always something you want to keep in mind. We will touch on Merlin later, but you never want to have something that only Merlin heard. You have no idea if you heard it or not. What's up? I can't see it if you just read it to me. I usually put it on the checklist myself. So I haven't seen guidance that we have to write the habitat type on there. I have been writing that as my checklist comment, basically where I'm birding. If I'm at the Cheslin wetlands, I'll just write wetland side. If I'm over at Exton Park doing a loop around the pond, I'll write loop around the pond. I do that. I mean, I do that on a lot of my checklists anyway. So I'm already in that habit. Barry has a question.
Well, not a question, but a comment. That kind of touches on the fact that if you've got a hotspot, you don't necessarily want to use the hotspot for all of your checklists because that person asked the question and talked about coordinates, and coordinates would help you figure out the habitat.
We're going to get into the hotspot thing too.
I don't know if we can get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that. It's the weirdest part about all this is if we're all used to using eBird a certain way, atlasing is different than how we're all used to using eBird. Like as you've seen with the hour-long checklist, habitat types and whatnot. We'll get into the actual locations you're going to use. Sorry, I forgot my mouse. It's sitting at home on my table. So that's sorry. We have acknowledgements here. You can read through at your leisure. Here are the regions the state has been broken up into. We are in the Southeast region, obviously. Here are some of the different regions around the state. Each region also has a regional coordinator. Our regional coordinator here is Ross, who I'm sure most of us know of, or have interacted. I think he talked to her a couple weeks ago, right? Most of us know or know of Ross. Angela and I are your county coordinators, and above Ross in this organizational structure will be Amber. Going through all this, you can read. This is all backgrounds. I just want to get down to where we're actually getting into how to do this. So we'll come back to the blocks too. So here's the guidelines for the checklists. We talked about must be through the Bird Atlas portal. We really want to do your best to have, and even if it's not going to be 100% accurate, try to actually have a count on the species and don't put X's. If you had a lot of crows, try to think that you had 50 or 60 crows and not just put an X. They don't have to be 100% accurate, but it is better for the data to have a number. Distance short, a mile or less. Checklist short. I know I said it says 30. They have to change that to an hour. Here's where we start to get into the hotspots. So the way the blocks work, the blocks are just laid across the state in the 3x3 miles. They don't respect county lines. They don't respect hotspot borders. They're just in lines across the state. So you need to take, eBird will pop up and tell you if you're nearing a block border. You need to make sure your checklist is all within one block. So if you're at the guidance we have received currently, if you're at a hotspot and it's a hotspot that is it's a smaller hotspot, it's entirely contained within one block, you can use the hotspot pin as long as you're atlasing like within a mile of where the pin is on the map. If you're at a big hotspot or sometimes hotspots actually don't all connect to each other, like State Game 143, where we like to go, has multiple paces that don't actually touch each other. So the hotspot kind of doesn't mean anything there. We've been using personal locations there when we bird those spots around SGL 43. So really, if you have a hotspot, you could set up Exton Park. You could have one personal location, the pond. You could have another one for the fields. But you want to keep your checklists within the block, within a mile, and within an hour. I probably didn't explain that great. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Every hour you're going to be doing a new checklist, and you also want to keep an eye that you're in the same block. Like you don't, if the trail you're on somewhere crosses across the block border, you need to cut the checklist and start a new one. Because we're collecting, the data in this is by block. We're trying to figure out what species are breeding or potentially breeding in a block. If your checklist cuts across 2 blocks, you don't know which one you actually atlased. Does that make sense? Okay. I didn't think I explained that great, but thank you. And another thing that's going to be important with this as we get into the breeding codes, you need to sit and watch. We all experience birders in here at different levels, I'm sure. You need to know what you're looking at. You can't just think, oh, those birds over there are doing this. You need to actually watch, pay attention, watch bird behavior, which is fun. Like you actually are birding and paying attention to birds. You're not just listening. You're not just trying to get as many birds as you can and walking out of there. You need to watch and pay attention, which if you like birding, that's fun. So I'm gonna get down to the breeding codes and all that, because that's the really confusing stuff here.
Okay, nice. So Debbie wants to double check 1 line, 1 hour, 1 concise application. In one block.
Those are guidelines. I mean, it's not part of it.
Right. If you missed cutting your checklist and it went 1 hour and 15, it's not like they're going to delete it, not use your data, but they want to try to keep the checklist concise. So the breeding codes are the crux of this. They're broken up into 4 categories. Observe we can basically ignore, because if you use flyover or no code, it doesn't, that data is not being used. So there are 3 categories of breeding, which are possible, probable, and confirmed. And you can see these listed out here. We'll get into more detail on each one means, but these are what you want to be using while you're out atlasing. So I want to go through the chart. This is where the most confusion, I'm sure, comes from. N is no breeding activity. E would be either migrating or breeding. M would be migrating. B is breeding, and that's also known as the safe dates. And here's a better explanation than mine. Migrant, expected prime migration window for the species. You're not expecting to witness any breeding behavior during the migrating period, even if the bird is in the correct habitat. Like if it's February and you see a bunch of Canada geese at a pond, that's different than if it's June and you see Canada geese at a pond, because they're migrating versus in the breeding period. Either, they can be either in the breeding or migrant. Breeding only, it's generally assumed that the bird is breeding, attempting to breed, or has bred in that period. Some exceptions here. All right. Here is the crux of it. Sorry, I'm trying to get to that. Back to this. All right, here is the portal. Has anybody here not used the portal, looked at the portal, know how to change to enter the portal? Okay, I'm sure somebody on the phone does. It's actually pretty simple. On a Droid, you go in, if you're using the phone app, you go into settings, then to portal, and then you pick Bird Atlas, and you can just leave it there. And I know, and iPhone is very similar. You tap down here, settings, portal, Bird Atlas, and you can see here this actually says Pennsylvania Bird Atlas. So if it says Bird Atlas there and you start your checklist is going in the portal. Question?
Someone who's not signed up for the, Bird Atlas.
For eBird or
Well,
the,
you're not, I'm not doing it.
okay, oh, okay,
I haven't signed up, I
We-
haven't volunteered to do it,
okay.
but I go out and I bird and I use eBird. And I submit.
Mhm.
for-
Yeah, there's nothing to sign up. Yeah, there's nothing
But
that's,
I mean, I'm not assigned a block.
so there's nothing, so you don't, we'll go into the box. You don't have to sign up for a block. The block is more of like taking ownership of a patch, of an area and saying, I'm saying this will get birded by me or by someone else. This block will get done. Anybody can bird anywhere. Anybody who is birding anywhere and using the atlas and using the breeding codes is contributing and volunteering. You don't have to sign up for anything. If Barry signs up for a block and you want to go bird that block, you're contributing by using the portal.
Okay.
You don't have to sign up for a block. You're contributing just by using eBird, using breeding codes, and submitting to the portal. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Cool. So you have to go through that. We're going to go through here. So we're just going to kind of pass over. So the possible codes should only be used during the B periods. To me, this is the most important part of this, and the part generates the most confusion. So ask as many questions as you have on this. This is the most important stuff. Possible codes should only be used during the B's on the. Can I get that? I'm sorry. All right, please hold. Looks like the list of everything. Sorry. Anyway, I'm just gonna pull up the one, we're gonna use the one on page 13. We're gonna use that as to work off of. We're gonna use the white person not hatched there as an example. So, the possible breeding code should only be used during the B when a species is marked with the B. So, say it is first week of May, we see a nuthatch. It's in the right nesting habitat for nuthatch, which would be basically anywhere on a tree, that kind of thing, doing nuthatch things. It's first week of May, you can code that with an H. I see a nuthatch, it's within the safe dates, which is the bees. It's in the right habitat. It could be nesting here, it's possible. You would use the H. Here's some examples of birds in the appropriate habitat. Be a Virginia rail in a marsh, a bobolink in a field, mallards are on a lake, that kind of stuff. The other possible code would be singing bird. To use our nuthatch example, it's the first week of May. You hear a nuthatch singing. It's very good. That nuthatch is a singing bird. We're within the safe dates. I'm going to code that. It's possible this nuthatch is on territory and it's singing. If it was the first week of May and you heard a nuthatch singing, you would look at your chart here and say, it's not in the safe dates period. I can't use that code. If you only have the H or the S to use. You only use these two codes during the period. Has everybody got that? And I will show you, you don't need to lug this around with you all the time. There is a much easier way to figure out the dates. So I was looking at page 13 for the, oh. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, sorry. So I was looking, let me put this link in the chat, I have this. No, I haven't. I'm just the one who doesn't know how to use a computer. So that's me. Put the link to this, the handbook in the chat. We will also go over how to get there much easier, but there's the link. So we were looking at the example of the chart on page 13 that shows the nuthatch. The safe date period is all of May, all of June, all of July, and the first part of August. And you would only use the possible codes when there's the B. Sorry, I need to find my spot again. No, it's going through the codes. Okay. Now we're going to get to the probable codes. The probable codes you would use during the B period or when it's got the E on the chart. So looking back at the nuthatch example again, the E starts halfway through March and then goes into the B through the summer, and then is the E through the end of August. So these codes are more likely that the bird is engaging in breeding behavior. These are probable codes, which is obviously stronger than possible. These are things like, I've had a bird singing in this tree for the last 7 days. This bird is very likely on territory. Pine warbler singing for the same group of pines 2 Saturdays in a row, barred owl calling for a week. Pretty good indication it's on territory or attempting to establish territory. Using the example of the nuthatch, that's the first week of April. It's in a migration or breeding period. Slap that S7 on there. So that's a probable nester. Some of the other probable ones are multiple singing birds. If you had 7 nuthatches in your tree singing, they're probably trying to own territory. That would be pretty cool. I'd come over and see that. But you could use that you would use these all during the E or the B. Territorial defense, which would be something like The great horned owl pair duet is considered a territorial defense. If you've ever heard that, like the male and the female kind of pick up after each other's songs. Carolina wrens do that too. That's the kind of thing territorial defense is. Courtship display or copulation. Every bird's got their own courtship thing. Grouse, woodcock, mourning doves. You see them flying around the yard. Everybody thinks they're kestrel and then realizes 3 seconds later they're wrong. That would be a courtship thing. Visiting probable nest site would be 2 weeks ago, Angela and I had a red-tailed hawk standing next to a nest. It was during the E or B period for a red tail. We code that as a probable nest site. And then 2 days later we went and the female's head was sitting above the sticks. So our guess was correct. But with that, a couple days later, we changed that to a probable or confirmed. Confirmed codes. If you see any of these behaviors any time of year, the dates do not matter. Confirmed codes, if you see the behavior, use it for any species at any time when you see it, irrespective of date.
For example, the crow, seems like carrying, but it's not on the list of the birds that are nesting in,
Confirmed code. So Lois asked, she's seen a crow carrying nesting material, which is a confirmed code. Crows are outside of their safe nesting dates. Do you use the confirmed code? Yes. Any species, anytime, if you see confirmed behavior, you code it. Because the birds don't care about the dates. If there's a crow sitting on eggs February 1st, none of these dates matter. And I think too, we've all been birding for a long time, just with changes to the climate and the warmth and the fact that it's like mid-March and we're basically having leaf out right now. Birds don't care that they're not supposed to breed until June if it's 75 degrees in March. And so I would think these might get shifted to earlier at some point. These are based on data from New York and Maryland, who just did their atlases and historical data. I would think these are all going to get shifted up at some point before the 5 years are up. Everybody's nesting earlier. I think we've all seen that. Barry has a question.
Just a comment ahead. Pennsylvania's a big state, and between the southeast, the Piedmont Plateau, and the mountains up in the northwest, you're going to get a variation in dates. The dates they put on here are trying to cover the whole state, so they're not going to be exact for any particular place in the state.
Yep. And the good thing is, if you see confirmed behavior, that bird's nesting. If you see confirmed behavior at any time, use those codes. I thought I pulled this link up already, but I didn't. This link we'll go through what these confirmed codes are. Physiological evidence. Do we have any bird banders in here? Or on the line? Physiological evidence should only be used for a bird in hands, which doesn't apply to any of us. So these would be things like I'm banding a bird and I can feel an egg in there that's about to drop. I see a brood patch, things like that. Physiological evidence is mainly for people that are handling birds, which I'm never going to use it because I don't handle live birds. So basically you can ignore that one unless you're a bird bander. Carrying nesting material is pretty self-explanatory, but also you need some sort of knowledge as to what exactly like a barn swallow carrying mud, that's nesting material. Barn swallow is not going to be carrying a large stick around. So you need to have some level of knowledge what nesting material is for a species. Nest building is pretty straightforward. You're watching a bird build a nest. Pretty straightforward. Distraction display. Angela has killdeers that nest at the end of her driveway and terrorize her neighborhood. We all know the killdeer distraction display, the broken wing. Angela comes out of her house. The killdeer is trying to lead her away. That killdeer has eggs or a baby. That's confirmed behavior. Use nest. We can use this year after the breeding period's over. We don't want to, we're only collecting data for this year and the next 5 years, the next 4 years. So if, like this weekend, we saw an old Baltimore Oriole nest hanging in a tree, that would have been a last year nest, which isn't part of the Atlas period, so we didn't code that. But if next February you see a Baltimore Oriole nest that still looks to be in pretty decent shape, you could log that as a used nest. And for those, you put a 0. Like say it's next February, I see a Baltimore Oriole nest in really decent shape. Obviously, you don't want to flag that you saw Baltimore Oriole in February. You would put 0, Baltimore Oriole, use nest, and probably put a note explaining what you saw. If you're putting a used nest, you would put 0. You only really want to do that for the atlas. Otherwise, you might have to write a note because some of these things would be. I think they still are flagged. I think even if you put a 0 and it's a flagged rare, you have to put some kind of note. But you want to be clear that you didn't actually see the bird, such as a neotropical migrant nest that you find in the winter. Everybody knows what an Oriole nest looks like. It's a good example. Nice little basket hanging from the tree. Marsh wrens are pretty obvious too. I know when somewhere like Cheslin where things die off, you can see those marsh wren nests over there that you really can't see in the summer. Occupied nest, that's confirmed, recently fledged young. Question in the room?
I don't know if this is appropriate yet, or not, but I have 10 warehouses in my yard. I clean them out at the end of the season. Is that appropriate?
Appropriate to clean them out or appropriate for coating?
To clean them out.
Oh yeah.
They don't like to go back in.
Right, yeah. Whatever you normally do for your birdhouses, I don't have any. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to clean them as soon as they're out of there. Whatever you would normally do, and then you could put a used nest there. You probably already would have coated them though if they were using the box.
I haven't coated anything ever.
But you will be this summer though. But let's just say you wouldn't have to coat it again as used nest. Once you code something for the block, you're good for the 5 years. So if you log bluebirds in your yard this summer, confirm nest, you're set for the 5 years in that block. You can code it every time if you want, and I probably will just because I like having the data right. But say you're away on vacation all summer, you don't check any of your boxes all summer, you didn't see any nesting yourself. You get back in September and go to clean your boxes out, and you're like, oh, bluebird used this box. You put 0, bluebird, use nest.
But it's kind of universal that they all like really clean.
Right. Yep. You're good. Does that make sense though with like the used nest and the 0?
Yeah.
Okay. Some other carrying food, recently fledged young. You see a Canada goose with a bunch of yellow babies following it around. That kind of thing. Feeding young, carrying fecal sac, actually finding a nest with eggs or a nest with young. So, thought I pulled the link to pull up real quick. That is going to make this a lot easier. Come on. Please hold. Sorry for the delay. I thought I pulled this up already. So, cool. So Bobby Brown in Lycoming County. I don't know if anybody knows them, but the Browns are basically the birders in Lycoming County. Made this a lot easier for everybody. They put all of the data with all of the bird dates into a website, and all you have to do is punch in the date, and it tells you what breeding codes you can use for what species at that time. So, and this is wonderful. We use this all weekend. So you're out birding a lot this weekend, and it really helps. You can pull this right up on your phone while you're e-birding. So we'll drop this link in the chat. Or we'll get the link to you. But you put the date in, and it tells you what birds are in their safe date period, the B. So today's March 18th. These birds are considered within their safe dates of nesting, so you can use any code on them. This is a wonderful resource while you're out birding that you can just pull the list up without having to go through charts and figure out codes. Correct. But confirmed you can use whenever. So if you're out birding this weekend and you see a red-bellied woodpecker, or let me put that actually. If you hear a Carolina chickadee singing this weekend, you would be like, huh, can I code a chickadee? You go to the site, punch the date in. Carolina chickadee is within the any breeding code can be used, period, safe dates. You would code that chickadee as singing bird. It's not, that has been made since. I will drop that in the chat quick because this is wonderful. I'll drop it at the end. Or no, just taking a while to load. Come on.
Yeah, make another comment here. I haven't seen this addressed anywhere, but when they talk about singing, they're actually talking about singing and not just calling.
Right.
It's
So
not the chickadee.
it's the
For the Carolina chickadee.
Phoebe. Yeah. Sorry, I was on Black Caps all weekend. I got confused. Yeah, so that was something that I should have addressed that we did the singing. You need to know the difference between singing and calls, and Barry just pointed out a really good example of that with the DDDDD against BB Phoebe. So you need to know which one is actually a song and which is actually a call. But we're all knowledgeable birders here, so we all know that. The other one, so for these species, these 12 species here, if you were out birding this morning, if you saw them, you can use any code. If it was still light out and you stepped out of this meeting and you saw pigeons flying around, you'd slap that H on there for appropriate habitat. Because basically, any habitat's appropriate for a pigeon. And honestly, for most of these birds, unless I've been seeing them somewhere weird, I've been putting the H on them for ones that are with the safe dates. So like appropriate habitat for any of the woodpeckers here would be a tree. So if you saw any of these woodpeckers in a tree on this date, you could put the H on there. And you're saying that it is possible this bird is breeding in this block. Does that make sense?
Just another example. I had down in woodpecker this morning drumming. So that's a special case of singing.
Yeah, for a woodpecker, that's singing.
Yeah.
So you could put that as a singing bird.
So you could put an S next to that.
And this is even more helpful. This is helpful too. This whole thing's wonderful. So these are the birds that are in the E or the B. So the E was either migrating or breeding, and then the B is obviously breeding. So these birds you can use the confirmed or probable. So white-breasted nuthatch, if it was only outside singing, you wouldn't use that because that's a possible code. But I can't remember what the probable ones are. If there were 7 nuthatches in your tree, that's a probable code. If you had 7 nuthatches singing, you would say, wow, there's 7 nuthatches singing in my yard. There's 7 nuthatches singing in my yard. Let me check the dates. Oh, I can use confirmed or probable for a nuthatch. I'm going to put it with the, I forget which one the S7 is. M, the multiple singing birds. So the first group here, safe dates, can use any code. This group here is in the E, so you can use the confirmed or probable. Does that make sense? And then with question in the back.
How are we going to get this link here?
I just dropped it in the chat. We can. And once again, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, it's just this is what Bobby made at the share. And once again, shout out to Bobby Brown and Lycoming County for coming up with this. This is tremendous. Like I have this saved as a favorite on my phone, and I always have a window with this open in it. And just as an example, when things are going to get really hairy, let's say it's the middle of June. There are a lot of birds on here. So it's not too bad if it's the first week of January and the only birds that are in their safe dates is like bald eagle and great horned owl. So here would be the birds you could use any code for, just as an example, in June. And it's pretty much everything. So June's really the big month for this. And also to reiterate, if you see a confirmed code, if you see behavior that corresponds to a confirmed code, you can put that for any species at any time because they're definitely breeding. So if you see a magnolia warbler sitting on a nest in March, it's well outside the dates. I just figured something ridiculous. Obviously, it's well outside the dates, but the bird doesn't care. It's sitting on a nest in March, and it's definitely breeding, and that's confirmed. The only ones that are you need to use your head on and use this wonderful website is the possible and the probable codes. That makes sense to everybody. I know it takes a little bit to get the hang of. I feel that I know how to use eBird fairly well. This has taken me a bit to get the hang of. I've been forgetting to cut checklists at an hour. It's obviously not, it just takes a little bit to get used to because we've all learned to use eBird a certain way. And this is pretty different than that. But we're all smart. We can all work through it. Let me go back to today. Is there anything else? Yeah, it's in page 23. Sorry. Sorry, my computer's really slow today. As of course. I'm trying to pull up page 23 on your handout over here. It's about priority species. These are the priority species that we really would like to get some data on in the state. Most of these are declining. And you can tell that by looking at them. So some of these they would like more information on if you're able to confirm breeding, whether that's recording, pictures, a good note, all that kind of stuff. That the list there's on page 23. It's stuff you'd expect to be on there, like piping plover, upland sandpiper, a lot of neotropical migrants that are definitely in a steep decline. Some of these are expanding and we're trying to get a good handle on like red-headed woodpeckers. I read red-headed woodpecker, there's more in the state than they've ever had right now, which is pretty interesting. What's that? Sharpshin, which does nest in parts of the state. A lot of these don't nest in our portion of the state down here and would be pretty cool if there was, but oh yeah. I don't know why this is not. There we go. Sorry about that. Sensitive species. The ones that eBird considers sensitive that do nest in the state are these three. I mean, if you find a black rail nest, the first thing you should do is call me. And then we'll go from there. But I mean, I'd be really surprised if any of these three are found nesting in Chester County. But I don't know if you've had experience with the sense, like if the sensitive species, the way that works, you just put that checklist in as normal and eBird automatically hides it. So like if BQ goes out and finds a long-eared owl this morning, he puts that checklist in, he's the only one that sees the long-eared owl on the checklist. So that's automatically, you don't have to hide the checklist, don't do anything with that. So that's what the sensitive species are. So you can put those in as normal. The data pullers will still pull it, but these three are hidden automatically. Again, I'd be extremely surprised if any of these three are nesting in Chester County. Some have been. I would think it will be updated at some point and dates are moved up. If you've been birding a while, everything's nesting earlier than it used to nest. Just from obviously anecdotal evidence, the data I'm sure will show it, but this is Maryland and New York either just finished or are still working on their atlases. So they use some of their data and also historical data from Pennsylvania. I'd be surprised if dates aren't moved in the 5 years. But if it's updated, that'll be shared. But like Canada goose, their state dates are, I think, not until May. Geese are sitting on eggs now. So if you see geese sitting on eggs, put the confirmed. Yep. That's the good thing with the confirmed. If you have confirmed behavior, you can use it whenever. Yeah, the date doesn't matter for confirmed. If you see confirmed, log it. Doesn't matter the date. An additional 5 species aren't designated as sensitive in eBird, but we all know all 5 of these get bothered or are particularly sensitive. It's not a surprise which 5 it would be. So say BQ goes out and finds a sedge wren nest in June. He is very hesitant to let anybody know about that since everybody will be blasting tape of that sedge wren for the next month. You can hide the checklist or hold it until you're sure the bird is done nesting. If a check, because we've all hidden checklists for different things before, because sometimes you just have to, you need to unhide it for the data to be usable for the atlas. So if you do find a sedge wren nest, either hold it, hide it, but once they're done, you need to either unhide it or then put the checklist in. Does that make sense, everybody?
I don't understand. Are there bird terrorists out there or what?
Yeah, I guess is nobody in this room would do this, obviously, but there are people who bother birds for different reasons, some nefarious, some out of ignorance. Some people want a better picture to get 17 likes on Facebook. Some people are lunatic listers. Right.
It's not just one person necessarily. If
Right.
a really good bird showed up, lots of people wanted to come and see it. It's just gonna be a lot of activity that could disturb the bird. So you want to stay calm about it until the bird is done nesting.
And some birds are more prone to disturbance than others. Some are more prone to draw attention than others. Like a king rail. Like, I don't know if anybody went and saw that one in Philadelphia last summer. That bird had about 50 people a day coming to see it playing. And if like 1 or 2 people go over and are judicious with their use of playback, you're not necessarily going to bother the bird. But if 30 people a day come and play king rail calls to get the bird to come out so they could see it, that bird's leaving. So right, yeah. And birds expend an awful lot of energy to build nests, lay eggs, collect feed for their young. So this is the most vulnerable time of year for any bird, even if you're a sensitive species or not. So that's one of the things to talk about the ethics. Like, you need to take care that you're being ethical with this. And some bird, like, if we lived in Potter County where 9 people live and I found a great horned owl nest, I would have no fear of just posting the great horned owl nest and nobody cares. If you find a great horned owl nest in the middle of a marsh creek in a really obvious tree, a billion people are going to come see that bird, maybe bothered by accident. So if Barry finds a great horned owl nest over at Marsh Creek, it might not be a bad idea to hold those checklists or hide those checklists until those birds are out of there. And that's something you can use. You just have to use your head on. We all know what birds get bothered, generally owls. Other stuff that is very responsive to tape is prone to being bothered, like a sedge wren or a king rail. Something you need to use your judgment on. If you have any questions, you can email either of your county or regional coordinators, which would be me, Angela, or Ross, and we'd be happy to help. A lot of us know what birds will get bothered. It's owls, things like that. So, like, I have a great horned owl nest I found a month ago I've been hiding. And then I'll unhide the checklists when the birds are done. Because it's in a pretty obvious spot in a place. It's accessible. That's another thing too. If you have a great horned owl nest in your yard, you don't need to hide that because hopefully nobody's coming in your yard to take a great horned owl picture. Hopefully. Like I said, if it's Potter County, I'm not too worried, but a lot of people live here. More people than ever are birding, which is a good thing. Sometimes birds get bothered. It's intentional, not intentional. People aren't always nefarious about it, so people just don't know. But sometimes birds get bothered. And that's some of the guidance through here. Hide your checklists. You do need to unhide if you want the data to actually go, because if you hide a checklist, it's hidden to everybody except you. So that data is not usable. Does that make sense, everybody? Yeah, here you go. If you have any questions, please reach out. But I think most of us know there's things that will get bothered. And That's about all I had for the actual presentation part.
You want to say something about or bring up the Atlas website?
Oh yeah, that's the third thing I was gonna do. I'm sorry. My computer's loading slow, but there is an Atlas website here. It is awesome. Oh, I did have the questions to go through too. So here's the Atlas website, ebird.org/atlaspa. There are a plethora of links here. So the Atlas handbook is here. That's the Atlas handbook we just went through. If you want to look at that at home or yourself, there's the Atlas blocks, Atlas essentials. I know somebody asked about a magnet or something to put on your car. There's I went to Atlas essentials and went to shop. You'll be the coolest kid in school with this Atlas on the side. With this big, you can have this magnet on the side of your car and just letting everybody know how cool you are with that. But I know somebody did ask about that. That was one of the questions I got ahead of time. That's accessible through the Atlas page. There's all sorts of data here. Amber's been putting up articles here and there. Those are down here at the bottom. What's that? Hey, all words are made up. If we want it to be a word, it's a word. So Atlas thing's a word. Amber does articles on here. There's some all the data we like pulling out of eBird. It says here's the counties over here. It would make sense that Montco would be one of the ones with the most confirmed species by now in that part of the state. But there's a wealth of information and links here. The handbook was here that we went through. How to use the portal, all that good stuff is here. And that's ebird.org/atlas. Question in the room. I did have.
This is very good, but the Lycoming website that Jeff talked about, you should all have it in your email now.
Awesome.
I just emailed it out to the club.
And if you have a smartphone, just say that's your favorites right now, because it is used it all weekend. It's tremendous, especially as more and more birds enter their safe date or their either migrating or breeding period. The list just gets bigger and bigger. It's easy to remember in the first week of January when it's house sparrows and pigeons, but more birds keep getting added on there. So Lois helpfully sent me some questions from the group ahead of time. Yeah, so the block lines don't respect any other lines like a county line or a property line or anything. So you just, if you're at Chesline and you're about to cross a block, you have to cut the checklist and start a new checklist. You just have to pay attention where you're on. Yeah, it tells you when you're crossing a block. I have no way to.
If you look at the map on there, you can see but yeah, it'll pop up a message.
Let me try to. I can't do it on my phone and show it on the presentation, but if you're you have a checklist going, it'll pop up at the top of your screen, nearing edge of Atlas block in orange at the top of your checklist, and then it'll say left Atlas block. Right when you're actually out doing your checklist, when you're out birding. Yes. Yeah. So we can try. I can show the blocks. I assume so. It's huge. A lot of places do, and a place can be tiny and span 2 blocks just because of where it is. Yeah. I'm gonna try to.
Pine needles themselves,
Let's do a fake checklist.
which is very acidic.
Yeah.
However, they turn brown, they become completely neutral, which is a pH of 7. According to studies from multiple
Checklist to the website.
Used as a mulch do not make soil more acidic. In fact, even when green and worked under, they make a negligible impact.
Chesline's here somewhere.
So that's good.
This is gonna work. Ignore that. I can share the people in the room after on the phone. I don't have any way to do my phone to share the presentation. We can do that after. But it should be in the handbook, and it does pop up at the top of your screen if you're nearing the edge of an atlas block. And also, if on your phone, quick, everybody has a phone in front of them, even just people on there. If you do, right now, if you do start checklist, cool. Yeah, oh, whose cameras? I think hers is. It's hers. Oh, it is mine. Whew. Here's how the blocks look for the people on the phone. If you can see it. There. Pull back a little bit. So that's how the blocks look. So on your phone right now, if you hit start checklist, and then eventually start your checklist. If you tap in the upper right there for the location, and you start to zoom out, you can see the atlas blocks. And you can see where you are in the block. And as you approach the edge of a block, it'll pop up on your phone that you're approaching the edge of a block. Does everybody see that on their phone right now with the zoom out and saw the block? So, like the block below us, it looks like, what is that? The Mount Bradford Preserve goes across 2 blocks. So if that was somewhere you were birding, you'd have to pay attention to where you are in the block. And if you cross over and go to the other one to bird, you're gonna have to start a new checklist.
I have an app where I can just start a checklist.
Mhm.
So I haven't told it where I'm burning.
What knows where you are? In the eBird app?
They follow me, yes,
Right.
But then, I haven't looked at the top to say, extract.